Okay. All right, and hello, welcome to the Lost Confederacy channel. This is week 8 of the 13-week fiscal program for American Prisoners of War. Today you have myself, Chief Biko, as well as Chief Alligator, Chief Quiet Water, as well as Chief Black Coat. And here, as always, we focus more so on that first letter in the acronym APOW, which is American. Starting us off today, I have Chief Black Coat read off the 12 steps for recovery. I think he popped off for a minute. I'll go ahead and read them off for him until he returns. Step 1, learn about the estate or estates your family originated from. Step 2, who established that estate. Step 3, what tribe and confederacy had jurisdiction over that area prior to the European. Step 4, ask all nonprofit organizations you attend, what's your position on reparations. Step 5, they either support it or they don't. No support equals no money. However, if they support it, then children and adults need weekly classes free of charge about steps 1, 2, and 3. In addition, field trips to APOW landmarks in that city, county, and state are needed. Step 6, don't support European holidays for the remainder of the 13-week time frame. Step 7, avoid spending money with any small business that does not hire your people, i.e. gas stations, nail salons, subways, corner stores, etc. Step 8, all businesses need operating cash, so spend money with American businesses. Step 9, all other groups rely on our energy and operating cash to survive. Set the trends of making other groups follow our lead and support our clubs, services, products, and entertainment. Step 10, the U.S. government is bankrupt. The Federal Reserve prints money, i.e. quantitative tightening, i.e. quantitative easing, and it burns money, i.e. quantitative tightening. The US dollar has been backed by gold since Richard Nixon in 1971, the gold standard act. The government operates off the full faith of its citizens to pay debt and taxes. American prisoners of war no longer have faith in the US government. This is why financial support will be altered, stopped, and redirected. Step 11, teach your children 1 hour a day about the history on this land. Have them learn about an American inventor. B, have them know about our heroes. C, they should know the European that conquered the estate you live in. And D, they should know the nation of people prior to European invasion, militarily and culturally. Step 12, practicing these steps will educate us on the land we're claiming America and attaches us to the history and laws of the US government. Every estate American prisoners of war live in should have steps 1, 2, and 3 advertised via social media, radio, and newspaper. This in 13 weeks, 1 fiscal quarter will bring us together for our common cause. So as always, we like to just kind of pick out one step that kind of stood out to us, whether it be this week or today. The one that pretty much sticks out to me, I'm going to go with number 3. What tribe and confederacy had jurisdiction over that area prior to the European? So again, just getting back to who we were, and who had actual authority on this land prior to any European stepping foot on this land. Actually knowing that history would tell us a lot about ourselves and is a good, I would say, starting point to actually, start your education with American history in general. What are you all's takeaways from this week's step reading?
For me this week, I would say step, step 6, don't support European holidays for the remainder of the 13-week time frame. I think that's just a constant reminder of how you can get in the whirlwind of all of these holidays that they throw at us. We're coming up on towards the end of the year when you have Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and then it just continues. So just being more open-minded about just kind of not supporting those holidays. Save your money and redirect your funds elsewhere.
I would say today, step 5. They either support it or they don't, meaning being repaired, reparations, no support, no money. However, if they support it, then children and adults need weekly classes free of charge about steps 1, 2, and 3. In addition, field trips to APOW landmarks in that city, county, and state are needed. Yeah, we lack education as a group of people. That's the only way that we don't know who we are. We've got a lot of organizations amongst our group, but it's the simple things like field trips to these different places to remind you of, it would just debunk the slave narrative. We've got too rich of a history to walk around and think that we were just slaves.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll go ahead and continue with this week's American Inventor. Go ahead and share my screen. And for this week, we have Patricia E Bath. She was born in Harlem, New York. Let me actually pull up her bio. Harlem, New York, November 4th, 1942. She passed away May 30th, 2019. And she is credited for, she actually invented the device for cataract surgery. So I believe it's called the Laserphaco probe, or Laserphaco probe. And that just basically helps remove the cataract, which causes that cloudiness in your vision, helps remove that from its patient. Let me see, patent number is 4744360. And that patent was actually granted December 18th, 1986. Here's just a better look at that device. See if I can kind of blow it up a little bit. So you can see here, pretty, just, I mean, just the way she pretty much built it just seems very simple. What was needed to actually get the job done. And this was actually invented in 1986. And Patricia Bath is the one who is credited for that. So again, just another doctor making stuff look easy. Another American doctor making stuff look easy. I know one we spoke about maybe 2 weeks ago now, heart surgery. Now we have Patricia Bath, fixing eyes. So anything you need, any problems, we coming up with solutions for them. So definitely wanted to highlight this one, especially since it's pretty recent, I would say, or one of the more recent ones in regards to inventors that we've come across. So definitely wanted to honor Dr. Bath here in regards to highlighting this invention that she created.
That's a good one for this week.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Look, I need to go ahead and get my eyes. Shoot, see what's going on with me.
That's the surgery. I believe my mom had that surgery a couple of months ago. Yeah.
Cataracts.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, an American woman invented that. An American woman invented that. Next, we will have Chief Alligator with this week's Dr. Woodson quote. Pull up the page here.
I want to go with scroll down toward the end. I believe the one is toward the end. Okay, number 9, because this goes right in hand with what we've been doing the last couple of weeks. Dr. Carter G. Woodson, The Miseducation of the Negro. I'm going to do quote number 9. Negroes must become like English gentlemen who study the law of the land, not because they intend to practice the profession, but because every gentleman should know the law and the interpretation of the law by the courts. 2, all the rights of the Negroes in this country are involved, and a larger number of us must qualify for this important service. We may have too many lawyers of the wrong kind, but we have not our share of the right kind. And that really just boils down what we're doing. The law of the land is going to be treaties. And we've debunked the fact that all these treaties are fake because the United States government, Congress never declared war. But if we didn't study the law of the land, we wouldn't know that. So if if y'all want to build on that, that's today's quote.
Just to kind of like piggyback off what you said, if we hadn't put in the work, then none of this stuff would just be none of this stuff would make sense, and none of it would go unchecked. So we just be thinking, everything is running how it's supposed to be running, unless we actually looked at the instructions per se or the rules of the game, then we would think that the game would be played correctly. So that's one thing, again, just have to study. And like you said, in law, again, that's just the rules. What is the rules underneath this system? And we've shown ourselves proven to do that. And we'll continue to do that today as far as, just providing proof of claim in regards to this government's blatant lies and contradictions.
I definitely agree. I think that we've proven it. We're doing this every week. We've been doing it for over a year. So I just think that everyone just needs to jump on board and educating themselves on the information that's there, and you don't have to dig too deep to find it. So I agree with both of you as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And lastly, last but not least, we'll have Chief Quietwater read this week's legal definitions and maroon historical points.
Okay, so the legal definitions: number 1, American, indigenous to America; number 2, descendants, one who follow in the bloodline of an ancestor, either lineally or collaterally; number 3, slavery, a situation in which one person has absolute power over the life, fortune, and liberty of another; number 4, prisoner of war, a person, usually a soldier, who is captured by or surrenders to the enemy in wartime; number 5, school, any institution at which instruction is given in a particular discipline; number 6, education, an enlightening experience; number 7, recovery, a return to a normal state of health, mind, or strength, the action of process of regaining possession of something stolen or lost. And then the maroon historical points: number 1 was a person escaping slavery, seeking freedom, or breaking the law; number 2, providing unity and a strong defense came first; number 3, maroon leaders were first and foremost military fighters; number 4, maroons established guerrilla warfare, planting sharp sticks in thick grass; and number 5, maroons knew their European enemies' language, defenses, and plans.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you there, Chief Quietwater. And last but not least, we're going to jump into the Constitution, which we'll definitely be citing a lot today, just in regards to, again, just showing proof of claim, showing the exhibits that a lot of these U.S. government representatives are, using or stating certain things that just aren't true or just aren't listed within this Constitution. Let me pull up, where's the screen? Share. All right, so the first one we're going to do is Article 1, Section 10. And Article 1, Section 10 states, no state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. So a lot just within this one section that we can really just pull apart to really just destroy this whole 1866 quote unquote Indian hearing that we're going to be again diving into today. But we'll just focus more so on the money part, or the monetary part. And what it says here is that gold and silver are the only thing that can be used for payment of debts. So just like we read earlier in on step 10 in the 12 steps to recovery, it stated that gold and silver were taken out of this system, 1971. So if gold and silver were taken out of the system, meaning that gold and silver no longer backs the dollar, then every time we're using this dollar, we're not paying towards any debts that we have accumulated. So that's just the first blatant lie and contradiction that we're seeing between or seeing within this government. One is saying that they're taking the money out of the system in 1971, but its foundational document, which is the Constitution, states that the only thing that can be used for payment of debts is gold and silver. That's the first thing we have to ask ourselves. So what are we doing? What are we just playing with? Basically monopoly money, straight fiat. Next one we'll go to is Article 2, Section 2, and that just lists off some of the powers of the president. And it states the president shall be commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of several states. So again, it's always, I think recently, I forget who, but there was a raid on former President Trump's estate. And now we're seeing these, I guess you could say, unidentified groups of individuals, which are militia, are, I believe they are in front of, certain government buildings. I want to say maybe the FBI or something like that. I'm not quite sure, but I know it's definitely been news and talk around multiple groups of armed individuals around these different areas right after President Trump's estate was raided. So we have to definitely just keep that in mind. Okay, who has the power of the militia? Who controls, who commands the militia? The president. Again, he's a former president, but again, these people, unidentified, armed individuals are around these different locations. So again, just something to think about, who is the actual, or who actually has this power underneath this government. And lastly, we'll jump to Article 6, which basically just states what is the supreme law of the land. And of course, it's supposed to be treaties, but as we see, all of these treaties that have been signed with the actual Americans are false or invalid. They're fugazi. They're basically nothing. So we'll go ahead and continue to jump into that. And I'll go ahead and state what this says here. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary, notwithstanding. So again, plain and simple here, supreme law of the land is the treaty. So anything in any of the different states that are trying to contradict any treaty that has been made, it's going to be voided. It's not going to matter because, again, according to this government's constitution, the supreme law of the land is the treaty. So again, just three things to kind of keep in mind as we continue to break down this hearing. And I'll go ahead and jump straight into that. Pull this up here. All right, so last week, I believe we stopped off on 16. And it's just basically a recap. Last person or last representative we listened to was Maxine Waters. Again, not representing quote unquote Black people. She was representing the United States government and was very fighting super hard for this group called Freedmen, which again, we're going to highlight that's not us. We aren't even being spoken about within this 1866 hearing. But again, somebody who's supposed to represent, our caucus, being a chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus, not even mention the people or group of people who she's supposed to represent, should just be another slap in the face for our group. But we'll continue to go ahead and listen to this and continue to debunk what is being pretty much talked about here.
If the panelists could take their seats as we're introducing them, I'd appreciate it. For our second panel, we have the Honorable Brian Newland, Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs at the U.S. Department of Interior. The Honorable Chuck Hoskin, Jr., Principal Chief, Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma. The Honorable Lewis J. Johnson, Chief of the Seminole Nation of Oklahoma. The Honorable Michael Barrage, General Counsel, Choctaw Nation. The Honorable Jonadev Chowdhury, Ambassador, the Muskogee Creek Nation. Mr. Stephen Greetham, Senior Counsel, Chickasaw Nation. And Ms. Marilyn Van, President, Descendants of Freedmen of the Five Tribes Association in Oklahoma. I want to remind our witnesses that your full written testimony will be made of the part of the official hearing record, and we would really appreciate it if you could keep your remarks to 5 minutes, because this is an extraordinarily packed panel. And we will start with Secretary Newland. Please proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. Thanks to Vice Chair Murkowski and members of the committee. It's great to be here today. My name is Brian Newland. I have the privilege of serving as Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs here at the Department of the Interior. I want to thank the committee for the opportunity to present the department's testimony at this important oversight hearing on select provisions of the 1866 Reconstruction treaties between the United States and the five tribes in Oklahoma. Several of these treaty provisions provide certain rights and privileges to some freedmen, who are people who were enslaved and later released from servitude by the Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Muskogee Creek, and Seminole nations, called at times the five tribes. The department appreciates the opportunity to discuss these important treaty provisions. Each of the five tribes enacted laws supporting enslavement and/or restricting the rights of enslaved people. In 1866, after the Civil War, each of the five tribes entered into treaties with the United States. Those treaties contain provisions addressing the status and rights of freedmen and persons of African descent residing amongst the five tribes. It is important to understand that there is no single treaty or uniform law that applies to all freedmen. The Cherokee Nation, the Muskogee Creek Nation, and the Seminole Nation each have their own treaty with the United States, and the Chickasaw and Choctaw Nations share a treaty in common with the United States. All four of these treaties have slightly different provisions relating to the freedmen. In 1896, Congress established a commission to the five civilized tribes to prepare membership rolls for each of the tribes in anticipation of allotting their lands. Congress directed the commission to determine applications for citizenship in each of the five tribes in accordance with their treaties and their laws. Congress also required the commission to make a roll of freedmen entitled to citizenship in said tribes and to include their names in the lists of members. The final rolls would remain with the Commissioner of Indian Affairs and be considered the true and correct rolls of persons entitled to the rights of citizenship in each tribe. In the past half century, there have been disputes within some of the five tribes regarding the legal status of freedmen descendants. The Cherokee Nation resolved the dispute over the status of Cherokee freedmen utilizing its own judicial and political processes. In May of last year, Secretary Holland approved the Cherokee Nation Constitution that explicitly secures the citizenship and political rights of Cherokee freedmen. In a statement accompanying her approval, Secretary Holland stated that the new Constitution, quote, fulfilled the nation's obligations to the Cherokee freedmen and encouraged other tribes to take similar steps to meet their moral and legal obligations to the freedmen. In February, I participated in consultation sessions with leaders of the five tribes to consider the potential for some direct services to the freedmen from the BIA and the BIE. In particular, we asked the tribe's views on whether the Bureau of Indian Education should admit certain freedmen descendants as students at Haskell Indian Nations University and at Southwestern Indian Polytechnic Institute. We continued to review feedback and comments received from that consultation and have not made any decisions on a path forward. Determining eligibility for those services is a challenge for the department when considering the freedmen descendants. The department generally defers to tribes to determine who is and who is not a tribal citizen, as tribes have inherent authority to determine who qualifies as a tribal citizen. And as sovereign parties to treaties, tribes have an important role to play in interpreting those treaties with the United States. However, as Secretary Holland stated last year, the department continues to encourage tribes to take steps to meet their moral and legal obligations to freedmen descendants. The department's grateful to have the 5 tribes together here today, along with Ms. Van, and we look forward to continuing our work with the 5 tribes and with the committee as we consider the legal rights and the status of freedmen descendants. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Newland.
I'll go ahead and start right there. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that individual that just spoke was a part of the Interior, Commissioner of Interior, or something along those lines as part of that. And one thing that kind of stood out to me was he mentioned that freedmen were enslaved individuals by the respective nations. We definitely highlighted who the actual freedmen were last week and week before that, and that they were actually refugees and freedmen from rebel states. So that was just one blatant lie told by the individual there. And again, I'll go ahead and make sure I show again the proof of claim that highlights who the actual freedmen were and what they came up underneath. So let me pull that up. So again here, and the control of all subjects relating to refugees and freedmen from rebel states. So again, these are separate nations now that they're talking about when it comes to Cherokee, Choctaw, Seminole, Creek, all of the nations that are pretty much present in this hearing. And what he's saying is that freedmen are enslaved individuals from these respective nations, but that's a direct contradiction of what is being said here. Refugees and freedmen from rebel states. So these groups of people, or these nations, are separate from their whole government structure. So how can this even be true? Is the first question here that I would have to ask. Let's see here. Anybody kind of want to build on that, or any takeaways from what you heard with that individual that just spoke?
I'll go ahead and jump in. First, I want to understand exactly who this guy was that was speaking. He's the assistant secretary. So whoever the secretary is, they didn't show up to this hearing. So he's the assistant, he's the backup. And he's the assistant secretary for the Department of Interior of the United States government for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So this is an employee of the United States government sitting in a position on the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Department of Interior. So what we have to understand is, who does he work for? He works for the United States government. So if he's in his right mind, he's not going to go against this government that he's on the payroll of. So he's not for the American that's been denationalized. We got to understand that. Going back, the first point that jumps out, now that we understand his position and his role on the chessboard, what side of the chessboard he's on, he's going to come out and say Civil War, because it's to this government's benefit to perpetuate that lie that there was a Civil War and that these treaties are some type of Reconstruction treaties. The second point that jumps out to me is persons of African descent and freedmen. What we saw from last week, and Chief Biko maybe want to pull it up, because pull up the Cherokee Treaty, because that's the group that he was talking about, the Cherokee. He mentioned African descent and freedmen, but he left out the Negro. And we know that the Negro has the power to maneuver through their court system and their society as they so choose. We know now that the Negro is the original Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, those that did not go west of the Mississippi River. He also said each nation has a treaty, and that the Choctaw and Chickasaw have one combined, but each nation has its own treaty. But here's where it gets tricky, and you have to untie these knots. The US government allotted lands. So we got to ask ourselves, if these are supposed to be nations, how can Congress of the United States government allot lands to another nation? So we see that these nations are subordinate to the United States government. In addition to that, Congress also dictates their membership. So Congress tells them, hey, create a role and you tell us who your citizens are. So again, it all rhymes that these nations are fake. And I can say that they're fake, or we can say that they're fake, because the original Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creek, and Seminole were east of the Mississippi River. You took a percentage of people and put them west of the Mississippi, and then you come up with this make-believe new group of citizens under these nations. You stole the name from the original people, and then you put Europeans and all these other people under it as if they're us. And that's why we're not being mentioned in this hearing. Nobody's talking about the original or the indigenous.
It's kind of like what they've done. So basically, they just took the blueprint from the east of the Mississippi and just used it west of the Mississippi, created these fake nations, and went on with the narrative, and everyone fell in line with that narrative. And I think that it goes to, like we're proving every week, in regards to the same thing with the inventors every week. All of it's the same thing. Their game plan hasn't changed at all in regards to them taking something, making it their own, and just running with it and continuing to just go and go and go. And no one challenges what they've done. So that definitely goes in line with what you were saying.
Chief Alligator, he said a lot. He pretty much broke that man's, or the Secretary of Interior for the Indian Affairs, $5 Indian, that guy, just highlighting who he is. He works for the United States government, and sitting at that hearing, he's representing the 5 tribes recognized by the government. So yeah, going back into this fictitious playland, they're sitting there and act crazy like there's only 5 tribes, you know, still here that this government recognizes. No, you're the ones that you've created, and you know, they have these imposters sitting up there representing them, and like Chief Alligator said, in their benefit as far as the United States government. So just a guy that was looking at these people is kind of annoying at this point. Like, that's what is this? Like, I'm trying to figure out what it is, but yeah, he's just he just has a position. Then he was the assistant. So who does he work for? Who's a real guy above him? And again, he came out there to testify on behalf of the United States, 5 nations that they still consider nations.
And they contradict themselves. The last point on that was, he said tribes declare who was a tribal citizen. Well, how? Because Congress is telling you what land you're going to have. I'm sorry, the United States government, a separate nation, its Congress is telling you what land you're going to have. And then it's telling you to create a role of membership. So how are you going to sit up here and then turn around and say, well, we have the right to decide who our tribal citizens are going to be? How? They made you up. The fact that you got Europeans claiming to be American tribesmen, that in itself makes it null and void. Chief Biko pulled that up on last week's video. They adopted whites. But you're not the original people east of the Mississippi. Who gave you the right to say that you can adopt African descent people and white people into? No, how do you do that?
I'm just over here looking for the term, because I know Maxine definitely highlighted it last week in regards to the Cherokee Treaty specifically. Is right here. Member of the nation, until the adoption shall be the only parties. Let me see. When I typed in the freedmen, I know this is specifically what she had went over. They further agree that all freedmen who have been liberated by voluntary act or of their former owners, or by law, as well as free colored persons who were in the country at the commencement of the rebellion and are now residents therein, or who may return within 6 months, and their descendants shall have all the rights of native Cherokees. So again, just highlighting the point that you just made, how can you say you even have any control when they're telling you who will have rights within your respective nations? And pretty much the language is going to be the same for all of these tribes that will speak today within this hearing. That was just a great point.
More so, sorry to cut you off, Chico, but more so than anything, this is kind of reflecting on how these people are prisoners of war. Taking a group of people, putting them on the land that you carved out, however you got it, and just saying this is what you are, and this is who you are, and this is who we will recognize. Just more proof to the prisoner of war attitude. It's just the other prisoners of war are benign and neglected. It's just kind of like, we're gonna act like they don't exist, so there won't be any more conflict. We'll have hearings to address this 1866 Indian removal, or whatever they call the hearing, and pretend at this point, but throwing interfaces. What are you talking about? Scripts all over the place.
So help me understand something. Here's where I'm confused. If you're moving people by a military west of the Mississippi, how do you then pick and choose once you move them west of the Mississippi? So these people had houses,
Right.
you know, you're basically, they lost everything. How are you then moving them? And then you're nitpicking who's going to be what. So the idea that they're going to say that some of these people were slaves, how, when they all lost everything? Because you're moving everybody.
All of you are prisoners of war.
It don't make sense.
All of you are prisoners of war. There is no hierarchy. You're all being told what to do.
Again, you were relocated and renamed, so it's kind of like, and then you have these people representing you, the imagination or the imaginary people. Yeah, false representation, you know. Benign and neglect again, prisoner of war. You don't exist, and if you do, you better open those blinds and who was those people behind there? Oh, don't look back there. Those are the Negro. Those are the Americans. However you want to look at it. It's just like they don't want to shine light. They can't shine light because it don't go in alignment with the Civil War.
Absolutely.
And then why haven't you claim these people in the East? Doing that work right now.
Let me see. I'll go ahead and continue to play after the last one, which again you said was the Assistant Secretary of Interior. So I think now we'll finally get into some of the actual quote unquote chiefs of these nations.
Chief Hoskin, please proceed with your testimony.
OCO, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Wado for inviting me to speak today. Supreme Court Justice Hugo Black once wrote that great nations, like great men, should keep their promises. Cherokee Nation is keeping our promise to the Cherokee freedmen and their descendants under our Treaty of 1866. That treaty, Mr. Chairman, is a living, powerful, and foundational document that ties together every one of our agreements with the United States. When we speak of our most important treaty rights, our reservation in Northeast Oklahoma, our right to a delegate in the House of Representatives, for example, we point to the language in the Treaty of 1866, which reaffirms all of our prior treaties, not inconsistent with that treaty. Cherokees must defend and we must preserve the Treaty of 1866. Article 9 of that treaty states that, quote, all freedmen and their descendants shall have all the rights of native Cherokees. Not some of the rights, all of the rights. Treaty obligations ought to mean something. Mr. Chairman, you can't pick and choose which parts of a treaty to uphold. We criticize the United States when it fails to live up to its treaty obligations, yet we in Cherokee Nation have a responsibility to live up to ours. For Cherokee Nation, the issue of freedman citizenship was settled 156 years ago. It was settled in a treaty agreed to by the Cherokee people ratified by this Senate and signed by the President of the United States. Our ancestors agreed in 1866 to forever cede the right to exclude freedmen and their descendants. This means that Cherokee Nation's past actions to exclude freedmen descendants from Cherokee Nation were void ab initio, void from the beginning. The enslavement of other human beings and the subsequent denial to them and their descendants of their basic rights is a stain on the Cherokee Nation. And it's a stain that must be lifted. Mr. Chairman, I offer an apology on behalf of the Cherokee Nation for these actions. Just as important, I offer a commitment to reconciliation. I'm proud of the many actions that we've taken over the last 5 years towards reconciliation. In 2017, a federal district judge decided the Nash case. That case confirmed that the 1866 treaty remains alive and well and guarantees that descendants of Cherokee freedmen shall have, quote, all the rights of native Cherokees. To bring that matter to a close, Cherokee Nation did not appeal. The day after that historic decision, our own Supreme Court affirmed full citizenship for freedmen. We immediately began processing applications for citizenship from freedmen descendants. To this day, Mr. Chairman, more than 11,800 applicants have become citizens. In 2021, our Supreme Court unanimously ruled that the by blood language in our Constitution also violated our obligations in the Treaty of 1866. Our High Court determined that those words were invalid from inception and must be removed. As noted, Secretary Holland reviewed our Constitution later that year, and she wrote the Cherokee Nation had, quote, fulfilled their obligations to the Cherokee freedmen. The Nash decision and our swift actions to implement it was a beginning. It was not an end. We understand that we must embrace the spirit of equality each day. For more than a century prior to the Nash case, freedmen had been disconnected from the Cherokee Nation. Many in the freedmen community did not have the same experiences, the same access to services, the same opportunities as non-freedmen citizens. It's essential that we work to bridge that gap. So in 2020, I issued an executive order on equality, reiterating our commitment to that ideal. We also need to make sure that we are mindful of the freedmen experience. So in 2021, I announced the Cherokee Freedmen Art and History Project, which seeks to ensure that freedmen voices are represented within the Cherokee story. I'm proud to appear with my friend Marilyn Vann, who I appointed last year to our Environmental Protection Commission, the first Cherokee citizen of freedmen descent to hold a Cherokee Nation appointed government post. Mr. Chairman, I'm here today because it's a moral imperative that I be here. I'm here to proclaim that having finally kept our promise to Cherokee freedmen, Cherokee Nation is a better nation. It is a stronger nation. Mr. Chairman, I'm here representing a great nation. Wado.
Thank you very much, Chief Hoskin.
So that was Chief Chuck Hoskin of the Cherokee Nation. I saw you jotting down some notes there, Chief Alligator. Did you want to go ahead and start off this one?
Yeah, let's just come straight up the middle with it. He said, Chief Hopkins, as you said, Cherokee Chief, says they're from Northeast Oklahoma. So the first question is, that's not where the Cherokee are from. Let's start there. You know, the Cherokee come from east of the Mississippi River. You know, so for you to say that they're from Northeast Oklahoma, you're just ignoring the original or the indigenous that are on the other side of the Mississippi. The next thing that jumps out to me is he said that the treaty was ratified by Congress and signed by the President of the United States government. The bigger question is, when did the United States government's Congress declare war? See, you keep standing on these treaties. You keep standing on the treaty, but when did they ever declare war? So this whole thing is a ritual. It's a stage play. You know, you're gonna stand on the 1866 Indian Treaty, and you're gonna admit that the United States government acted within its rules, which is its constitution, by voting, ratifying, and then turning that document over to their president and let him sign it. So when did Congress ratify and declare war? All of these treaties are fake because you can't show one document from the United States Congress where they declared war against the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, or the Creek, or the Seminole. Because if you could prove that, if you had that document, you would see that those people are from east of the Mississippi River. They're not from Northeast Oklahoma. So that's where I am right there. The last point is 2017. He said the US government judicial branch decided a matter on behalf of the Cherokee people. So again, you're not sovereign. You're not the real Cherokee because you got another government's court system making a decision for what you're going to do. And then he followed up immediately and said, then the Cherokee court decided after the European court made a decision, now your court wants to get in alignment with it. So it's a made up group of people. A lot of people are going to get in their feelings that are on those reservations in Oklahoma. But the fact is the fact. Those people came from east of the Mississippi River, and those people need to be spoken for and they need to be represented because they are the indigenous Americans and you stole their names.
And I think just listening to this, like you said, it is a ritual because it just does not make any kind of sense of what they're trying to paint this picture of in regards to the treaties. Like they were fake to begin with, and you can't really make much sense of them even now. You know, trying to like make it all come together and make sense is even more clear with me listening to this, that you can't make it make sense because there wasn't a war. The treaties didn't mean anything. And there's no, it's a stage play, just like you said.
Just to kind of piggyback off of both of y'all. Yeah, it's just highlighting kind of what Chief Black Coat had stated earlier, just going along with the narrative. We're just going to continue to say, you know, it was a civil war, and that's really going to be our starting point. Because to be honest with you, that is 1866 is a lot of pretty much most of these nations, quote unquote, nations starting point. A lot of their constitutions are going to be after 1830, which is the Indian Removal Act. So, you know, so they jump straight into 1866, and like you stated, it's okay. What is this a treaty for? Like, what are we shaking hands about? Because when you're reading the treaty, you're just getting slapped around, bitch made, saying, okay, this is what you're gonna do. This is what your people gonna be. This is y'all from now on. Oh, we need to decide. Well, we gotta have, you know, the boss sign off on this in regards to this court case to 2017. Well, since they said, you know, it's valid, I guess we have to do what they said. Like, you're not running anything. So you're not a sovereign nation. You're just, you're puppeteering like you are, but you still have to make sure you contact your supervisor or boss if you're gonna call out. Like, you're not an owner. You're not an owner of these lands. They can take them away just like they did in 1830 when they removed you from these lands, but you don't want to talk about how they even removed you. You were fighting. Well, you all weren't fighting because you're no longer a part of that Cherokee lineage. You're a different group. You're Cherokee Nation. But the real Cherokees, they were fighting, still are fighting. This as well with the rest of the tribes that will be speaking the original lineage, because they're still east of the Mississippi, still battling. So it's just funny, like you said, that they're not talking about how they even got to, what did he say, Northeast Oklahoma. It's just like, yeah, this is where we were, and this is where we established, and we carved out our land and made a deal. No, that's not how it happened. There was constant battles. You got roped off, whole Trail of Tears, Indian Removal Act, and now we're going to tell you what you are and who can be a part of you all's nation. So it's just funny to hear them even talk about, you know, what the Cherokee Nation stands for, and it's like, okay, yeah, this is complete BS.
Yeah, we pretty much said it on that one. These are just guys in suit and ties right now. doing their job, per the government. And what's this guy's name again? Mr. Hoskin. He said that, his Cherokee treaty wasn't consistent with the 1866 Indian removal. And it's like, duh, buddy, how could it be? The treaty you're speaking on is wrong and false and created out of thin air because there was no, the treaty means there was a war. So your treaty is just another allegory. Just, it's never going to be in alignment because, we're pulling shit from thin air right now. So, Mr. Hoskin, you're going to be battling a lot trying to, whatever you're trying to prove. Sounds like they're just in there bickering about allotments. Somebody wants more money, whatever they're in there talking about.
Correct. Chief Biko dropped a powerful statement when he just mentally tied the timeline in from the Indian Removal Act. If we can pull up the Cherokee's website, that kind of goes in line with everything that y'all were just sharing, that even on their website, it says when they got established, which is 1830, which that's a lie because Cherokee were existent before 1830. But we're on their website now. September 6, 1839. In the paragraph before that, you can say, despite many efforts to defeat the Duacha Treaty, measures to remove Cherokees from their homes and farms got underway in 1838. Cherokees, intermarried whites, and even slaves were summarily rounded up and placed into more than a dozen stockades to await their departure. So even on their history timetable, you're dancing around the fact of who the real Cherokee are east of the Mississippi. You can't just start from Oklahoma. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to start as if, hey, here we are. We are established in Oklahoma. But you're contradicting yourself even on their history page. Because it says up here, what paragraph would this be? Where it says, according to tribal history on your screen, it says treaties were made between the British. Yeah, that first paragraph. Treaties were made between British and Cherokee nations as early as 1725. You're contradicting yourself. So where were these Cherokee at in 1725? This is before you removed them west of the Mississippi. So where were they? Y'all want to build on that? How all you got to do is just read the documents and put it right back in their face.
It just sounds like the government playing Big Daddy. It feels more so like the United States government is actively strong-handing us as far as, or strong-handing those nations as far as, I'm saying this is who you are, and we're pretty much the creator of whatever, thinking removing them from their original land, putting them somewhere else, they could be, like the god of who they are today. So it's, with them contradicting themselves, it's kind of just like they're playing their god, like, you're the Cherokee, I'm acknowledging you as a Cherokee. And that's just not the case when we know what a real Cherokee is, but it's like, yeah, they're strong-handing them right now, making documents pretty much being daddy, saying this is your name.
Right. And they strategically did it, it was bits and pieces all the way up to the point where they were just totally just dictating what they were going to be called, what land they were going to be allocated, how they were going to be structured and things of that nature to take total control of the whole narrative. You on mute, Chief Biko.
My bad. Even in this last sentence in this paragraph, saying Cherokees took up arms at various sides in a conflict between European factions in hopes of starving off further predations of Cherokee land and sovereign rights. So where was this Cherokee land at? We know, all we hear through US history, they were coming on the East Coast. So right there in his first paragraph is showing where the Cherokees' land was on the East Coast. So how do we end up in Northeast Oklahoma as the starting point? You're contradicting yourself within your own, on your own website. So you're saying that, okay, the original Cherokee was on the East Coast, east of the Mississippi. Because again, these Europeans, they came, landed on that whole eastern side. That's why you get the New England. We even hear about, Spanish in Florida. So they're all up through the East Coast, and they're saying here that this was the Cherokee land. This was the pretty much Creek Confederacy land, that whole Southeast region. So it just, it's funny to hear them say, or not talk about that. They just want to jump straight into, 1866.
And if you can just read that whole top paragraph, just to piggyback on what you just said, or I'll read it and y'all build on it. This just puts the icing on what you just said, Chief Biko. According to tribal history, Cherokee people have existed since time immemorial. Our oral history extends back through the millennia. It's recorded that our first European contact came in 1540 with Hernando de Soto's exploration of the what? Southeast portion of the continent. So we've been there forever, east of the Mississippi. Then it goes on to say trade and intermarriage with various European immigrants soon follow. I'm going to say that's a lie, because that's them, like Chief Blackco said, enforcing, dictating what happened. No, who says that we wanted them to be a part of what we had going on? You see how they just put that in there? Like, oh yeah, we were just cool with intermarrying with them, and nah.
Whole Thanksgiving narrative and shit. Nah, that is not what was happening. If that's the case,
and then
why
we add in 3 different Europeans, most notably with the English, Scots, and Irish. So the same people that you were emptying your prisons and sending over here, you want to try to shoehorn them in and say, oh, we just welcome them with open arms.
You're getting the most foul people of these European countries' population, and you think our ancestors want to first interact with these and now have babies with these fuckers? Not at all. That makes no sense. You're dirty, you're straggly. That doesn't even, it's a contradiction in itself right there, because we just highlighted the whole point of Georgia even being created was that military buffer state. We know that they emptied out their debtor prisons. So they ain't want these fuckers at their own homeland. So why do you think we want these scoundrels over here? Like, it makes no sense.
And look at the bait and switch, just to build on that, the next sentence. Treaties were made between the British and the Cherokee Nation as early as 1725. That's a separate government. So it's almost like they're playing baton. It's kind of like how Georgia got set up. That was King George of Britain sending their general over here. And then it's like he just passed the baton to the European. It was like, okay, y'all gonna set up y'all own government, but y'all gonna still fight the same war that we were fighting. Y'all want to build on that? Because this first paragraph on their own website in Oklahoma, it debunks the lie that y'all are having the first ever hearing and you're not talking about where these people originally come from.
Exactly.
You said something critical, Chief Alligator, about passing that baton, knowing King George was the first one to try to cut a piece of land out, or whoever was the first. But now it's like, okay, we're still one with these people. Who wants to take over as far as this not extraction? Yeah, this extraction. So that was critical. Yeah, like continuously trying to overcome the land. Because again, it sounds like the Cherokee had made another deal with a separate government.
Any thoughts on that, Chief Biko, Chief Quietwater? Just how that first paragraph just pretty much it exposes that we are the indigenous.
Yeah, I agree with you guys, and just the fact that it's a contradiction. I mean, we're just pinpointing contradictions throughout this whole thing, from the hearing to just reading this in black and white. It's just clear to see that is all made up.
Yeah. Shoot, I'm in alignment with everything. Y'all pretty much said, yeah, this first paragraph just tells the story of, you know, what actually happened on this land. So everything that Chief, quote unquote, Chief Chuck, what's his name, Hoskins was saying, it's like, okay, your website doesn't even say that. You're saying established Northeast Oklahoma.
You know, it's so stupid for them to have this up there.
Direct contradiction. Like, and again, I mean, I guess they're taking a page out of their dad at this point. You know, we gotta make sure we put the information out there. We can say what we want, but we gotta make sure, you know, to keep our karmic debt off of us, we still have to put it in their face. They're not going to read this, so I mean, it really doesn't matter. It's pretty much, you know, they haven't read what the United States government is reading about. The hell would they look at us type of thing. So, you know, they just taking a page out of their dad's playbook when it comes to, you know, trying to at least wiggle their way out with some truths and just, you know, putting it in here. But yeah, just a blatant contradiction. So we know you came from Southeastern, you put it here, but you're saying, you know, otherwise. So
How about one more paragraph before we close it out on that page where it says, despite many efforts, despite many efforts to defeat the new Choctaw Treaty, measures to remove Cherokees from their homes and farms got underway in 1838. What do we know that was happening in 1838 east of the Mississippi River? Unlawful Seminole Wars. See how they're skating over the truth? They're warring against us at this time.
They're not going to talk about that, though.
They're not going to talk about it. So Cherokees, here we go again, intermarried whites and even slaves were summarily rounded up and placed into more than a dozen stockades to await their departure. So you're trying to polish up the fact that this is actually war going on. And as you're capturing prisoners of war, you're putting them in stockades, getting ready to ship them west. And then it goes on to say it's estimated that 16,000 Cherokees eventually were forced to undertake the 6 to 7 month journey to Indian Territory. That debunks what that chief said. You're not originated from Northeast Oklahoma. You're saying right here, 16,000 people took a 6 to 7 month walk to get to quote unquote Indian Territory. And what was the real name of it? Because Indian Territory is what the United States government called it. People were already there.
Facts.
In the land beyond Arkansas, between the stockade, starvation, and sickness, and the harsh winter conditions, some 4,000 Cherokee perished, never reaching their new land. So even on their website, new land. So where were they originally from?
I'm glad they said that, because that's exactly what I was thinking, you know, taking them from their world, bringing them to that new world. That's how they can have these hearings and pretend to be these people, because they wanted to erase that world. But again, just for them to want to roll with that lie, why would you put this on your website? It's just, we can see this being an act now. We can see this being like a television show, like it was scripted, because you have so many documents that's all over the place. It's like, okay, what the fuck is going on? Like this big production company is just putting out shit. They're trying to stay, you know, with the same things, but it's different people over different departments. So the stories kind of get mismatched. Yeah, your website, half-truths, you're up there claiming to be this people. Okay, what about the 4,000 that perished? And then, you know, where were they coming from? I mean, like, so it's hard to like just even keep up with these people, because like you're all over the place.
Yeah, it's just, like you said, they're just skating over the reality that, you know, folks is fighting. In this last sentence, this last paragraph, at Brazilian, the Cherokee people rebuilt their lives in Indian Territory along with other tribes who had been similarly driven away from the Southeast. Along with other tribes, but it was a war, they was forced out. Then it says here, Cherokee Nation's government unified the old settlers with the Cherokees recently immigrated from the East. So all throughout this, they're telling you exactly where the real Cherokees are from
And the new ones,
and the new ones are from.
the ones they recognize, or the ones they've,
Correct, correct. The ones they recognize. So it's blatant ones, and even the last one, Civil War, once they pulled the tribe or to the advent of the Civil War, again, none of those
Trouble
documents, even within those, say anything about a Civil War. So they'll mention this fake war or fake war, but not the unlawful one that was being, waged on them as well as the other tribes. And that's
Seminole
how-
War.
The Seminole War.
Yeah.
It's almost like that small percentage of us that got tired of fighting, they're too embarrassed to admit that they tapped out.
They lost.
Right. So they want to disinherit those of us that descend from the people that are been under war ever since this period. Because again, how you gonna take settlers, the slaves they're referring to? If I stand on the edge of the coin and just look at all the inventions and everything that we've done, the Americans, why would it be crazy for me to say that those European slaves that were being sent over here when they emptied out their prisons and they're homeless and sent their orphan kids over here, why is it hard for us to believe that we enslaved them? We enslaved that European.
You gotta flip the script.
And as that United States government started to beat us through war, they in turn did the same thing to us, what we did to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much.
And made them freedmen.
It made them freedmen.
Back to that last sentence, great point out, GB Code, the Cherokee people thrived until the advent of the Civil War, once again, pulling the tribe apart. Yeah, that Civil War, right now, I'm just getting it is to cover up the Seminole. Cover it up, call it civil. Call it civil. And they were, because who are the Seminole, if you call it that? And why were y'all warned? And how long were y'all warned? And who are all the tribes that came together during this war? And it's just a lot of questions come out. So they just put Civil War on it. We were fighting to come together. Yeah.
And why would that pull the Cherokee Nation apart? You see what I'm saying? Like,
Awesome.
the only way I can think pulling them apart is because you have this one group who tapped out, like we've been stating, versus another group who's still east of the Mississippi, battling through all of these different fights that we're having with these Europeans all throughout the Seminole War, even to today. And that's what really would have pulled the tribe apart, because like, okay, you all see we're fighting, you tapped out, so you don't even want to acknowledge that we're over here. That's what's really going, not no damn Civil War.
Well, you kind of cowered out.
Exactly.
So it's hard to say that when you know people are threatening your lives and you want to protect your family and things of that nature. But yeah, they tapped out. This is when they started to have the upper hand, when the tribes or the nation started to split, when you could divide us.
And if we're lying, my background, if we're lying and there was no Seminole War, why is it you can go to Tampa, Florida, and this map is on the whole floor of a museum today in Tampa, Florida? Why is there memorials in Ybor City in Tampa, Florida, where the Battle of Dade took place, which is how you get Dade County? You know, it's like they didn't get rid of all the evidence, but you want to act like these wars weren't going on. But this image behind me is from a real life museum that you can visit today in Tampa. But you're at the first ever hearing and y'all act like this didn't happen. It's crazy. And you got fake treaties that's still out there. You didn't burn them. You should have burnt the Treaty of Moultrie Creek, Fort Gibson, and Payne Landing if you were going to act as if this wasn't going on.
Yeah. If you wanted to go with the Civil War narrative, you should have burned the treaties.
Facts. Because even this crap here, I know we getting a little over, but this here just blew my mind. About 2/3 of Cherokee men fought on the side of the Union. Another third was actively part of the Confederate efforts. What Confederate efforts? I know they're not talking about the so-called Confederates. Like, again, like you said, they should have burnt the treaties, or should have burnt, because even in the Cherokee, the treaty with the Cherokees, 1866, it stated so-called Confederates. So
Right.
not only do you have the president at that time saying so-called Confederates, but you also have your own government, your own treaties with this government saying it so-called Confederates. But again, on your site, you want to call them that. Another just blatant lie. Another blatant lie.
Like something's missing there, like they're hiding something.
Mhm.
Yeah, 2/3 fault with the, all this. Who are
Random
these people?
numbers, yeah.
Right, you're just throwing Confederate and Union on it. Like, no, who are these people?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that was a good breakdown. Got through our first speaker representing one of these nations, Chuck Hoskins for the Cherokee, Cherokee chief, Cherokee Nation chief. So again, that's all we're going to be doing pretty much until we finish off this video. It's just highlighting the blatant lies that's being told by these people. Again, nobody that we've seen has represented the true Americans east of the Mississippi as of yet. We won't see that, just a spoiler. You won't see that within this hearing. But if you do, definitely go ahead and make sure you comment. Anything like that, get some engagement. If what we're saying, if what we're showing isn't true, definitely push back. Provide your proof of claim though, because that's what we're doing. So next week we'll definitely jump into it. Any last remarks, chiefs?
I appreciate you holding me down on the 12 steps. My Zoom just blacked out on me and just disappeared. I couldn't do anything. So I had to restart my computer like 2 or 3 times just to get back going. Appreciate you holding me down.
I got you.
For sure, for sure.